Welcome to another segment, installment, episode, whatever you want to call it, of Garden Channel Reacts with Farmer Q. Today, we're going to be doing a video featuring epic gardening. They have some really good content, and we're going to be diving into a video specifically today about mistakes to avoid when you're growing peppers. So without further ado, I present to you 5 pepper growing mistakes to avoid by Epic Gardening. Let's get it.
Peppers are one of the most fun crops to grow, no matter who you are, because there's really a
I'd have to agree.
for everyone. You have your sweet peppers, your hot peppers, your super hot peppers, your rare varieties, your classic bell peppers, your stuffing peppers. You get the picture. In fact, there's really a class of gardener that only grows peppers, which is kind of mind-boggling that there's something so fascinating about the pepper that someone would only grow those in their gardening life.
I understand.
I appreciate that dedication
They're
and
epic.
enthusiasm, which is why in today's video, we are going to talk about 5 different mistakes you might be making when you're growing your peppers. So I'm going to take one of these pepper plants from my grow bag garden. Let's examine it. We'll use it as our test case. And without further ado, cultivate that like button for 50,000 Scoville.
Definitely will be cultivating that like button.
Let's grab this beautiful specimen, this jalapeno that is actually overwintered. And we'll use this for our test case.
Beautiful. One thing that I did want to point out, though, that dripper that he's using, I've had terrible experiences with that dripper. And not to down the dripper he's using, because it's probably working really well for him, but I've had experiences with that particular dripper from Home Depot, and I know that that's the Dig dripper from Home Depot. And the thing about those things, I've used those in mass cultivation instances, and they have failed at like a 40% rate. So I would not use those drippers. We're going to keep it moving, though.
Mistake number 1 when growing peppers is their spacing, and more than that, their placement in your garden. So again, you have your sweet peppers, you have your hot peppers, you have peppers of all different varieties, and you want to preserve that flavor for the eventual harvest. Well, peppers easily cross-pollinate. And so especially, let's say you're growing a banana pepper and this jalapeno right here. Well, if you plant those right next to each other, they may cross-pollinate, and those flavor profiles may
more than likely will cross-pollinate.
You may have a pretty spicy banana pepper or potentially a somewhat mild jalapeno, and if that's fine with you, then that's fine with you. But if you do want to avoid that, sometimes it's a good idea to split your sweets and your hots into different sections of the garden to reduce the chance of cross-pollination. Also,
so I wanted to stop him real quick, and I wanted to say that another awesome way to stop cross-pollination happening, and he might touch on this, but I'm just touching on this real quick, is to stagger your planting times. Because sometimes a lot of people don't have enough space to really space out their peppers when they plant them all at the same time and have pollination not be an issue, because you're going to have bees flying around anyway. So I think the best way to handle that particular issue is to actually space out the times at which the flowers appear on the plant so that you can have free pollination going on across the whole board. But his way works as well. I just wanted to give you some additional insight, and he might touch on it, like I said, so get back to it.
When you have generally just general spacing, small peppers like this jalapeno, maybe a foot apart from each other is okay. As you get to these larger peppers that bush out a lot more, you can do about 18 inches or so. And if you're really going crazy and you're saving your pepper for seed, it's a good idea to space it at least 50 feet away from another variety.
I agree.
To really eliminate the chances of cross-pollination. Mistake number 2, and honestly, this is a mistake with a lot of plants, so I wouldn't sweat it if you make it, but try to avoid it, is a problem with watering. So peppers, like tomatoes, have the potential to get blossom end rot with inconsistent watering, especially like through a drought period, aka not watering it and then just flooding it with water because you forgot and you want to make up for it. Things like that can really stress the plant out. And so really consistent watering. What I do with the grow bags, at least, is I do grow bags on drip irrigation, so I can just turn on a valve. All these grow bags behind me get irrigated, and then I don't really have to worry about it too much. Another thing you can do is you can throw some mulch on top, and this would apply to raised beds or any other container. To really just stabilize that soil moisture so it's not going through this rapid drying out, wetting period. That's going to help
100%.
Quite a bit. It's shocking how much just properly watering a plant just eliminates so many of the problems.
That is a super, super important point. And I wanted to touch on that real quick, because a lot of the stuff that I've had the most success that I've had with, and this is peppers, this is broccoli, this is romaine lettuce, this is everything. Getting a mulch layer down and properly watering it as far as like the type of water delivery, and then not watering it too much has a huge factor on the development of that plant in a positive way. Now, when you're watering too much, you're throwing off the nutrient profile that happens naturally inside of the soil, because you're washing out everything that those microbes, that those bacteria, fungi, protozoa, what those guys have worked for. You're washing them all down and off the plant roots if you're watering too often and too, I guess, quickly. Because when you're watering so quickly and you're not using something like a drip irrigation to actually control the flow of that water through the medium, it's going to have potentially detrimental effects on the plant in a negative way. So you have to really consider all of these factors when you're trying to water a plant and trying to avoid things like he's saying, like blossom end rot and things like that. A lot of these problems are easily avoided. So we're just going to keep it going.
Another problem you're likely to run into with your peppers is overloving them, is what we call it. So you're fertilizing too much, or you're using too much nitrogen. So if you use a lot of nitrogen with your fertilizer, like if you were to dump some chicken manure in here, or any fertilizer liquid that's high NPK, so the N's really high, that's just going to lead to a lot of foliage growth, not a lot of fruit production.
Very true.
As you can see, this jalapeno is throwing off a nice amount of fruit. I haven't done a whole lot of fertilizing here, but I did apply a balanced, aka the NPK plus all the trace minerals and nutrients are relatively balanced in their ratio to the top. So it's a granular organic fertilizer that I made myself with some bone meal, some blood meal, some chicken manure, sort of different things like that. Put it on the top at the beginning of the season, and as it gets watered, it will slowly make its way into the soil. The microbes in the soil will break it down, and you have a really nice blended, slow release fertilizer. So you don't have to go crazy with it. You just really want to avoid over fertilizing.
Exactly. So I wanted to stop him there and touch on that nitrogen point real fast. So what a lot of gardeners and new gardeners especially don't realize with the nitrogen is there's so much nitrogen naturally occurring in nature that sometimes you don't even really need to add nitrogen to your situation, because sometimes your potting mix or a lot of times your soil mix that you put into your beds, they're going to have a good adequate amount of nitrogen, especially if you keep that moisture level just right. You're going to facilitate an environment for those microbiology based organisms to actually facilitate nitrogen exchange with your plants a lot easier. So you really want to make sure that you don't go hard with the nitrogen like he's saying, because you see his mixture that he uses, like bone meal and stuff like that. That's going to have calcium. That's going to have a lot of your phosphorus and your potassium and things like that. It's going to have small amounts of nitrogen as well, but it's not going to be the dominant thing within that mixture. So keeping that knowledge for sure. Thanks, Kevin. We'll keep it going.
The next mistake, which I don't really want to call a mistake so much as an oversight, is the ability to overwinter your pepper or grow the same pepper 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row. So let's say you like jalapenos a lot, like I do. I love jalapenos. Well, why would I throw this plant away at the end of the season and then start a new jalapeno plant from seed when this one's perfectly capable of growing over the winter and then coming back? And so what I did is I took a cut right here, I took a cut right here, and there's another one back there that basically cut it down about 2/3 or so in November of last year. Now, I live in a zone that doesn't freeze. If I did, I would have taken it inside and provided a minimal amount of light over the winter just so that the soil and the roots don't actually freeze and die. I left mine outdoors. But then what I did is, as spring approached, I just kept an eye. And what I saw is new growth starting to sprout out from these thick woody stems. And as you can see, this jalapeno plant is doing really well, and we're thriving in mid-June. So this thing is going to bush up and produce quite a bit throughout the rest of this growing season. And who knows, I probably will end up overwintering it yet again.
So I wanted to touch on this that he said. He said that he doesn't have to take his peppers inside. I think it's amazing that he overwinters his pepper, and I think that everyone should at least attempt to overwinter their peppers if they're inside a potted situation for sure. Now, I will also say that you have to pay attention to what he just said. He said in his zone or his area that he does not have to take them in the wintertime. He's obviously in California somewhere. So you have to really make sure that you don't directly follow every little tidbit of information from someone. Take the fundamentals of the information and then apply the micro intricacies to your particular garden or your particular zone that you're growing in. So that is an amazing piece of advice from Kevin about overwintering your plants, but you have to overwinter your plants in accordance to where you live. So we'll get right back to it.
So again, not so much a mistake as an oversight. If you know you want to grow the same variety next year, give overwintering a try. Our final tip before a quick little bonus tip at the end of the video is temperature really matters.
Yes,
now,
it does.
These guys are a quintessential summer crop. They love heat and they love a lot of sun, but if temps go above 90 for too long, especially as it's developing its flowers, these little guys right here can start to drop off, because what the plant does is it says, wow, these conditions are really crazy. I don't know if I, as an organism, can survive it. So what I should probably try to do is stop focusing on propagating myself and just focus on surviving. So it'll throw these flowers to the ground, and then it'll say, I'm going to shrivel up, I'll wilt a little bit, I'll try to make it through this heat wave, and then when things are safe, I'm going to go ahead and put my flowers back out. So what you do is you can add some shade cloth and or move it to a shadier spot of the day if it gets these crazy heat waves. So one thing people will do is they'll just take some shade cloth, put it over the top. I'll do a video on shade cloth sometime in the future, but a lot of people will get anywhere from 30 to 50% shade cloth. That percentage defines the amount of sunlight that
the intensity,
blocks, basically. So 50% shade cloth blocks 50% of the sunlight. So that can cut your heat down quite a bit. Our final tip has to do with the peppers.
So before he goes into his final tip, hey, that's super good advice about making sure that you maintain a proper temperature / UV exposure to the plant, because these pepper plants, they are heat loving plants, but like he said, once they hit a certain point, they're just focusing on self-preservation, as most things within nature does. So you have to take that in consideration when you're really trying to successfully have season-long pepper harvest. It's really important to think about that kind of stuff. So we're going to get back into it and let him finish up
themselves. So take a look. You've got this small jalapeno up here. Now, could you harvest it at this point? You certainly could, but you probably wouldn't want to, because it really isn't as intense in flavor and it's just not as mature.
True.
Now then you have a more or less middle mature one right here and right here. But then down here, look at this guy. This guy's starting to crack a little bit, or cork as it's called.
Yep.
And sometimes that is when the flavor really, really starts to come out. Some people will even wait till it corks even more. This is basically just a stretch mark on your pepper. That is, the skin is splitting, because the skin kind of stops growing, and then what you see is you see the interior kind of grow out.
Yep, it swells out.
Causes this little split. A lot of people will say this is the point where the flavor becomes really, really tasty. Pepper.
So he's right about that. I mean, the flavor of the pepper, it's like it hits a new level of intensity when you get those little striations or whatever they're called on the pepper, because yeah, you're essentially experiencing the inside of the fruit swelling and ripening. So you're going to have an effect that shows on the outer layer, even though you have an internal process going on. So these are some really good tips of advice, y'all. So make sure that you're paying attention in class. No, I'm kidding. Get back to it.
Peppers, again, one of the most fun plants to grow. And I really encourage you, check out some of my other videos on peppers, specifically.
Definitely going to check that out.
I think you'll find that pretty useful. But this guy is probably my favorite little guy, because it's the first one that I overwintered and it came out really, really well. So I'm probably going to have this one for many years to come. I encourage you guys to grow some peppers this year. Until next time, good luck in the garden and keep on growing.
Hey, that was an awesome video, y'all. I got to learn more insights about what I already do, which is gardening. I got to learn more about peppers, which I love with all my heart. And I am just stoked right now. I'm happy, and this was epic. So I'm going to leave a link to the channel down below, as well as the video. And Kevin was an awesome narrator today. He was awesome going through everything that we learned today. And y'all know what that means, right? That's Farmer Q out.